What's up, Northwest? My name is Boston Mendenhall, and this is Behind the Huddle. Today's guest is the legendary Dan Briggs. He's the boys swimming head coach, and over the years he has won a total of 8 rings, 5 of them with the boys, obviously combined with Waukee and the Waukee years before he eventually came here, and eventually the 2 teams split. But then also 3 as an assistant with the girls team at their previous three-peat. As one of the only coaches who could probably have brass knuckles made out of championship rings. It's kind of wild. But I do know Dan Briggs personally, so it's great being able to just talk with him about his process because most of the time he doesn't get too much into the intricacies of what happens inside the swimming team and everything like that, and all the strategies and everything he does to help manage players of such high calibers, such as bring certain athletes to Olympic trials and stuff like that, and multiple to the Division I level. But without further ado, here is Coach Dan Briggs. Welcome to Behind the Huddle. My name is Boston, and today's guest is the boys swim coach, Dan Briggs, probably one of the most successful coaches here at Northwest and Waukee. Here from the very beginning, starting the programs and all that kind of stuff. So welcome to the show, Mr. Dan Briggs.
Thanks, Boston. Appreciate it.
So before we get into some of the more high-profile questions, can you kind of just introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Dan Briggs, and I've been the program pioneer, I guess, if you will. We started way back in 2010 as our own standalone team, and I actually coached with Johnston ahead of that, and that's where our kids had a sharing agreement with them before we even had our own program. So it's been kind of a journey to get here when we had just a small number of kids that was actually participating, and then once we had our own program, though, it's flourished, and last year we set a record with 66 kids with our combined team, and so that comprised of Waukee High School, Northwest, and then we had some other swimmers from Adel and Earlham and Van Meter. So it's been kind of a fun ride to get everybody involved. So
yeah. So you've been coaching for a long time, like a very long time. You won multiple championships. You've done all these great things. But kind of just looking at the beginning of like a season, like how do you look to either recoup your losses from last year and try to build a team that can either continue winning championships or continue to compete?
Yeah. So I honestly recruit great people because I'm surrounded by people for a very long time in my day, and I want to make sure that I can be on the same level with them and just make sure that we focus on way more than just swimming. And that's one of the things, too, that we emphasize is that the swimming happens to be the icing on the cake, but you try to get yourself surrounded with great people and great things happen. And I've always been a proponent of that. It's always been part of my philosophy there as we do that. But every year is different. The people that you lose can never be replaced. And it's one of those things that you just try to restructure what you have. And you try to build that confidence in kids and just the support that they need to be able to do the goals that they're aiming for. And so every kid has a different goal, and you can kind of push them to that next level for sure.
Yeah, talking about people in general, like what do you look for in a person that's in your program, whether that's a coach or an athlete?
Yeah, so we kind of get thrown into the wolves there, if you will, pardon the pun there with the Northwest team, but we literally start doing double days from day one. So kids are going, everybody, JV, varsity, no matter what the level is. We start at 5:30 a.m. on the first Monday that we can start, and we go 5:30 to 7. And they go through some punishing workouts, not right away. We get the technique in and just make sure that everybody kind of has a good balance of life if they can, and try to figure that out right away because it's kind of starting their cold turkey. They have to go through school and hopefully not fall asleep. And then as they get through school, come back and swim for another 2 hours after school's done, and then really work just the conditioning part of it to get back into shape. Some kids swim in the off season. Other kids, this is kind of their first time since maybe even last year's team. So it's a very big variety of abilities, and it's a very big variety of talent as well. But as you go through there, it's great for the guys to kind of become friends along the way, and they can become good teammates. They don't necessarily have to be best friends, but they become good teammates along the way, and they look out for each other, and those are the things that we really try to value with our program. And we've got our 5 pillars that, the activities department talks about, but really the integrity part of it is the big key, is that we try to emphasize that if the coaches are here, that's great, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but if they're not here, are they still going to do the things that they're supposed to do when coaches aren't there, looking after them every single minute of the day? So those are the things that we really try to highlight. And we have a very high expectation of our swimmers. Grades obviously come first. School's always number one priority. And then swimming is the second. But we try to keep them at a very similar level to each other where we have high expectations in both areas.
Yeah. going back to like the pillar things you had,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that you personally have?
No, that's something that the activities department has had. We just had at the head coaches meeting here this last week that was kind of unveiled to us and all that. But there's lots of things with character, integrity, and just respect for each other, and there's a lot of things that we can really build upon those things, and they really kind of branch out into many facets of life. And so it's one of the key pieces for us that it's not just a swimming thing, it's not just a sports thing, it's a life thing, and it's one of those things that we're trying to mold these kids into becoming better people.
Yeah. So obviously you've been coaching before. What would you kind of say your pillars are? I've asked this for many coaches and different perspectives.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is respect for each other, respect for our time, respect for the facilities and things of that nature, and just respect in general, because our sport is unlike any other. We have breakfast after every morning practice, so it's not just the commitment of the swimmer, it's the parents that are putting on breakfast, or the expense, or the time and effort, energy that goes into that. And that's honestly one of the best times the kids have of the entire season is their time with breakfast. The parents get to meet some of the swimmers outside of the pool, and really while we're swimming, not a lot of conversations go on. So even though you're sharing a lane with somebody, you may only have 5 or 6 interactions with them the whole entire hour and a half or 2 hours, just because we're going at such a fast pace in the water. But just the respect of things, integrity we talked about there a little bit, but just character in general. And we want to be looked at as a higher light instead of a limelight, if you will. And one of those things that puts a spotlight on us is good and bad. And so we want to try to be more in the good if we can on those things when they come out.
When it comes to some of the teams, whether that's the team this year or the team that has like won championships in the past, what's kind of the thing that's like making the difference? Is it like they're more respectful towards each other and like the whole team is more cohesive and everything, like just relationship wise, and everyone's just like best friends and well, not best friends, but like, on good terms with each other, or like what's the difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it kind of revolves around another one of our key areas of community, and I think the emphasis on unity of the community as it goes through there, and realizing that it takes more than one guy to win a state title. I think that's the biggest thing that we have that separates us from a lot of other teams, is they may have a superstar athlete, but they realize they can only score 40 points if they win both the races, and that's never going to win a state title. You need over 200 points to win a state title, so that's not near enough. You need 5 of those at least to make that even close to reality. So the things that can make us a little different is our top tier guys want to bring other people up with them. And I think, other teams, they want to be the one in the spotlight. And so they, don't necessarily work all that well with each other. But for us, it's a matter of who can make kind of that JV to varsity tier cut. And then once you get to the varsity line, how low can your times really go? And that's kind of a focus that we've had the whole time is, you want to be put in a position to swim with people that'll get you to that next level and really push you to that next level for sure. And the guys that are willing to make that sacrifice and that effort, that it's paid off for them big time. And those that are still kind of trying to figure things out, they become a little bit more dedicated in the weight room. They become a little bit more dedicated in their off-season swimming and things of that nature too. So there's lots of things that kind of piggyback onto each other. I wouldn't say they're best friends by any means either, but I think they appreciate each other as teammates. And when they're around each other, they're great in association. And I think that's what it is that they all believe in something bigger than themselves. And when they put their caps on, it has their name on it, but it also has our logo of Northwest on there as well. So that's what they're representing. They're representing Northwest, and they're representing themselves. And we're hoping it's always in the best light possible.
Yeah. So when it comes to like some of those athletes, like obviously you don't have to give specific examples or names, but like as an individual athlete, what is the main thing that they show as it, like what makes them so high performing? Like is it the fact that they're able to take the feedback? Is it the fact that like they're super like down to earth and they're like almost egoless when it comes to the team, and they're like, hey, maybe I'm the fastest person in this race, but at the same time, in order for our team to win, I need to be in the 100 free versus like the, I don't know, like a 50 breast or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It comes back to the higher performing level.
Yeah, for sure. No, we have some guys on the team that are varied in all of their abilities. They can almost swim any race, and they could perform at the top level in almost every race. There's some guys that can do that in some races, and then we have the specialists as well. We have guys that are only good in maybe 1 or 2 events, and that would be at the varsity level. But those are the things that we have to kind of build our team around. And that's the neat part about a puzzle is every year, yes, it's still called the Northwest Boys Swim Team or it's the Waukee High Boys Swim Team or whatever it happens to be, but it's like you get a whole new set of puzzle pieces every year. And sometimes they don't always fit the way you think they're going to. And so that's the cool part about having varied strokes and just people with different abilities of all that nature too, where you can kind of see what they're strong in. And for them to be able to swim at their top performance, that's one thing for me to kind of say like, oh yeah, I have a gut feeling this is going to go well. we've seen this in practice or we've seen this work in meets before. But then there's also the element of surprise of the kids that you weren't really banking on that all of a sudden have been in the weight room. They've done other things that get them in a better position, or they've been doing other sports that kind of help them in their conditioning in the off season. And all of a sudden they're, performing at levels like we had several guys in time trials that were already faster than where they ended the season last year. So that's always exciting as a coach when you see that come in, is you got a guy that's already faster than he was last year. He's not trying to get as fast as he was last year, or it's going to take all season to get faster. They're actually coming in faster and smoother in the water than what they were last year. So it's one of those things that now you can just keep building upon that and really try to get that. We always joke, but your goal is how close to zero can you get, because that's what it ultimately comes down to. So, yeah.
So I want to dig more into your coaching philosophy. But before we go there, before this, I interviewed Coach Twig, right?
Yeah.
Kind of your almost partner in crime.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And
Sidekick, for
I don't
sure.
know if you still do this, but she said at one point you had a board to some extent with everyone's names on it, and you would go through and you would move them around to see what the possible combinations are. Do you still do that to some extent? Whether that's on a physical board or a piece of paper or something like that,
Yep.
but how do you kind of make your lineups?
That was true. I used to have magnets, and it was a magnet board, and I used to go through and move everybody around to see what the fastest combinations were. Now some of the program software we have will do that for me, so it's a little bit easier to do that. But there's still that element of a coach's gut instinct. You have to kind of figure out where kids are going to fit, but then you also want to try to see, what are some things that could happen. If you give a kid a shot, sometimes things are a lot different than if they are just kind of told you're not going to be in this spot, or we've already got this relay full. So if you actually give somebody an opportunity to perform, just to see what they kind of do with it and run with it. But this has been kind of a perfect scenario here too, of where, last year we had a runner-up team. We had a lot of the guys back. We had 11 state qualifiers back from last year, and it kind of divides out almost evenly with the two teams. So it's one of those now to where, what can you do with half your squad? And last year, kind of the ultimate testament to how deep we were as a varsity team with a combined team is we went to an invite on a weekend. There was one at Linn-Mar and there was one at Johnston, and I took literally two varsity teams to both of them, and we ended up winning both. So that's the second year in a row that we won both invites. And so that was kind of cool too, but it gave kids opportunities to shine in different areas. And I like to be as flexible as I can as a coach. I'm a multiverse person. Believe it or not, I actually went to college on a tuba scholarship, so that's kind of a rarity about me. But I'm also in the fine arts and things like that. My kids have been involved with show choirs from the get-go, and so I try to work around schedules as best I can, basketball players and things like that too, and of other things too. I know that Mr. Dobbitz and Ms. Murray try to work around and try to get all those things to work out as much as they can. Because we want to support that. We want to support a kid that's going to be multiversed and have a well-rounded picture of what high school life should be like. So that was kind of a little bit of a combination there, where I knew that there was going to be some show choir things, and I know they made it with just minutes to spare before their performances, but it all ended up working out. And that's kind of what we try to do, and be as adaptable as we can and flexible at those times. But knowing that we have their best intentions at heart is what we want to try to do, and sometimes it's hard because we want what's best for our program, but at the same time that's not always going to be best, because if you make a kid pick, you might get them zero. Yeah. And sometimes you got to try to go for that. But no, just some of those things there, we try to do that. Plus my philosophy kind of as a coach, when I first started, was every kid has a place on the team. I don't care if you're the fastest kid or the least fastest kid on the team. Everybody's got a place in our program. So we've had very elite swimmers. We just had Drew Ryder in the last summer here. He participated in the Olympic trials. He swims for the University of Indiana, so he was able to swim in 3 different races at Olympic trials for a shot to potentially go to the Olympics. And then we also have another swimmer, Lincoln Novotny, who has special needs. He has Down syndrome, and he was able to break a minute last year in the 50 free. And I think both of them got almost the same amount of applause. As you were so excited for Drew to be able to make it to that level, but also for Lincoln, he had a standing ovation as he was able to break a minute, not just once, but all 3 times that he swam in the 50 free last year at the conference meet for JV. So it was a really cool atmosphere. Those are the things you get excited about, and anybody in between. Those are things where when kids reach goals, that's one of the things. That's a huge milestone. That's a huge confidence builder now. And to hopefully project that into the future would be incredible. So they can be successful in their jobs, in their lives, and their families, and all those things in the future. That would be the ultimate goal of the whole program. So
yeah. So when it comes down to some of the things, when decision making, when it comes to certain roster things, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone has a spot on the team at the same time. Just because you put the best people in the best spot doesn't mean you win.
Yep.
So how do you kind of balance, athlete is possibly the best at what they're doing, but also maybe it's highly competitive, to also where you need them at? How do you find this balance where maybe you know that you could definitely win and get the points here, but at the same time, like, that one's probably more competitive, and you could go over here and maybe get the amount of points. Like, how do you find the balance in between?
And there's where you see what I do between all hours of the time we're not at the pool. But no, it's literally a chess match game of you becoming the other team's head coach for a while and trying to figure out what their best lineup is, and then bring it at yours, and then try to figure out how you can counteract that. And sometimes you have to go on the offensive, and sometimes you have to go on the defensive. And so there are people that sometimes have to swim their second or third best events, or maybe even their fourth or fifth, just so that we can have something to counteract what's coming at us in certain areas. And especially, in our world, we have 3 relays, and you can swim on all 3 relays, but you can only swim a maximum of 2 individuals for a maximum of 4 races in a meet. No matter what your level is, everybody can swim 4 times. So that's the nice part, is we don't have to bench anybody, or everybody gets equal playing time, if you will. But at the same token of that coin, we don't want to have lanes of like 10 guys at a time. That's just unsafe in all areas of the nature of the sport. So we've got to find that happy medium mix of what it is, and it's a commitment. I mean, when we were telling kids for the first 2 weeks that they have to do double days, we have 20 practices in the first 2 weeks of the season. So I mean, that's a lot to do, and you're tired. I mean, that's one of those things. It's a good test to see if that's something you can commit to the whole season or not. But as you're kind of progressing through, obviously, I'm looking at the teams that are starting to show, they've got some potential of different areas. And we've been at the luxury the last couple of years where we've literally just reloaded. We haven't had to rebuild in years. And I don't even know that I call it a rebuilding year. I just called it maybe a remolding year this year, just because we're all trying to find our identity a little bit. Because we relied on guys from Waukee High to do certain things, and we did certain things at Northwest. And now the worlds are kind of separated, but they're not, only by a bulkhead at practice. So we still see the same guys practicing with them and all that. We'll compete against them for the first time this year in a couple things. In fact, we have our first meet tomorrow and on Tuesday here right before Thanksgiving, and we will be facing them at the meet. So it's not our first duel, but it'll be still kind of an awkward situation when the guys that were our teammates and relay mates from last year are now all of a sudden in a different lane competing for a different team. So it brings that new dynamic, but it's cool to let that many more people participate, because this meet probably takes about 16 guys to go. So instead of 16 guys now swimming, we have 32 from the Waukee district. So that's kind of a cool thing too, to give opportunity to a lot of kids that will grab a hold of that. So some of these guys that are now swimming at the varsity level wouldn't have gone to the meet. Half the guys that we basically have wouldn't have even gone to this meet, and now we kind of give them more opportunities to shine and to see what they can do on their own at that point. So
yeah, when it comes to like the offensive versus the defensive, when it comes to like making the strategies, would that be like game day decisions, like walking in, seeing like whatever theirs is, and then switching someone like 5 minutes before a race, or like 5 minutes before like the meet actually starts? Like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm guessing obviously it's a lot of chess. I can't even imagine.
Yep.
Just trying to like have to process your own team, but then also figure out like, oh, what are they going to put out? So like,
sure.
How does that go down?
Yeah, so there's kind of some rules that are a little bit more kosher than others. So if you give your lineup ahead of the meet and you get a printout of what the other team has, it's not very acceptable to switch your lineup once you've seen what's coming at you. So basically, you're just trying to figure out what you think is going to do that. If you don't get the sheet, or if you're okay with other coaches doing it, you can actually change your event up until the time that it's announced. So you could actually just do it like literally seconds before the race starts if you wanted to, in that aspect of it. So, and I've seen both done. It adds a whole new element of surprise when you're at that point where you're just waiting for somebody to see who's going to go up behind the blocks, and you bring yours in there. But the nice part is usually the teams, you kind of know where their fastest swimmers are going to probably be. And when you face a really top-tier team, most of the time you have to put together a pretty decent lineup of where you're going on mostly offensive, but then you kind of soften the blows with the defensive of, we just can't get swept. We can't get first, second, and third, against us, because that's a 13-3 point differential, so you go down 10 points and that happens. So that's kind of a big hit to your point totals. But really it's the fastest one past 85 is what you're at. So when you get there, you know where the mark's at, and if you get your score past there, that you're going to win. So it's just a lot of combinations of how can you get, even if you don't win, you can still come out points ahead if you get second, third, and fourth. So you get 9-7 there if you do that. So there's a lot of strategy pieces to that. You try to get your B relays to beat the other team's B relays so that you can sneak in the 2 extra points there. That's 6 points for a meet. So just little ways to try to gain some strategy. Those are always big, in those things. But, on a relay, those are some big points there too. When it's 8-4-2 and you think you're going to win, all of a sudden you lose. that's an 8-point swing in one race. So that sometimes can be enough for other teams to kind of get that confidence to be able to take you out in other areas. But as you kind of alluded to, though, there's a lot of things that can go right. But there's also, a lot of things that can go wrong. And even if you have your best guy or, the best swimmer in that race, and all of a sudden, they get edged out by 1/100th of a second. It doesn't matter if they get annihilated or if they get beat by 1/100th of a second. The points still deviate the same. So yeah. But no, it's like you said, it's a chess match. But at the same time, our sport's kind of fun because the times of your swimmers and most of the times of the other swimmers. Yeah. So you kind of know what is going to happen if the score stays the same with what you think is going to happen. The big surprise when you put somebody in an event and they do something just incredible and you weren't planning on it, those are bonus points there when that happens. Or if you have a guy that's seeded last and all of a sudden picks up 5th or 4th place, and those are bonus points because you get those points, the other team doesn't. And so those are bonus points going in your category for sure.
Yeah, is there like a time or a story where something happened where it's like a huge swing, whether that was like to get to the points necessary for a championship or just like a meet in general where there's like someone you wouldn't expect something to happen, or just a complete swing or something went bad but then like evened out or something?
Yeah, actually, it was just last year where we had some pretty high seeds going into state, and Valley was we went back and forth all year long. We beat them at almost every invitational. We beat them at conference, and then they beat us at the state meet as we went through that, and then the duel when we did that. But it was it was a chess match the whole way. Where we were strong, they were strong, and where we were weak, they were also weak. So it was kind of a battle of the offensives there. And so there wasn't really a whole lot we could do, and they just edged us out on a few races where we were seated ahead of them, but then they'd end up beating us. So it was a 2-point swing every time that happened. Yeah. And they had a huge lead. I want to say they had a 50 or 60-point lead going into the last 3 races. So, they were feeling pretty confident, but our last 3 races are what we're notoriously known for, to be fast. Our backstroke, breaststroke, forehand and relay combination is pretty lethal. Like, we can be within 40 points usually and still have a shot at winning. We've done that several times. But we got it to within about 15 points by the time the last relay went off. So that was a huge, gain for us, as we had some really strong performances and just incredible swims. We had 2 breaststrokers last year compete that would have both set the school records. In fact, one of them is the fastest from Waukee High, and the other was the fastest from Northwest. So we had Jake Hamling and Klein Brock there. And we went, they went 2nd and 5th in the state. So those are some huge points right there. That's almost as many as a relay in just 2 guys rather than having to use 4. So that was a lot. And we had to move in with Dylan Alt. He was a great backstroker, and John Trosper. So again, we had Northwest and Waukee High, and those guys are both back to compete against each other this year. So it's definitely, that fun part of where you can stick the guys where you can get some points, but also it's fun to see guys kind of step up and get points where you didn't think you had any. And that's kind of what happened last year. And, we've got some great improvement in our distance guys in the 500 there with Drew Dickey and with Parker Scuffham. But again, 2 worlds divided there. We've got a Waukee High guy and a Northwest guy. So those are things that, being from a different school, they still wrap their arms around each other, and they're good teammates. And right now they're still good training buddies too. They still have breakfast together in the mornings and all that after practice. So there's a lot of fun camaraderie there that otherwise you may not have found friends, or the types of friends too that you're acquainted with right now. But as teammates, that's a huge part of it, is just trying to get each other to kind of build up and have those fast swims when it really comes down to when you need it. So a relay leg that, pulls off a faster split than what you've ever seen before, and to put you in contention to at least have your anchor with a shot. So that's always what it comes down to, for sure.
Yeah. Before this interview, I asked a ton of people questions.
Yeah.
About just what I should ask you.
Okay.
Like looking at, just for example, your hands. Like you have like 8 rings, like that, right? Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet to have. Yeah, 5 championships with the boys, and I was a part of the assistant coaching staff there with 3 with the girls. So yeah, it's crazy. So yeah.
What makes? Obviously, we're gonna unpack this, but what makes you different? So that, like, what's your coaching style that you find different, or something else that you did that helped you get to the point where you can almost, like, basically a brass knuckle, right? Like, which is just insane.
It is. And to start with that, like, my goal was just to be a varsity head coach. That was my number one goal, kind of getting out of school and getting into it, is I would just love to be able to be a varsity head coach at some point. And to win a state title, I mean, that's only something that maybe 10 or 12 schools have ever even done in their lifetime, And so there's a lot of coaches that have been in it for life and have never won a state title. And for us to do it in year 6, it was almost like it just happened. It was like almost like an accident, because Iowa City West had 3 guys going to the Olympic trials They had three guys, yeah. And then they had a couple of other All-Americans on their team. So you're just thinking, like, oh, my gosh, like, how are we going to compete with this? And they would have a guy win a race, and we would get second and fifth or something like that and just keep tallying up points. So they would get 20, but we'd keep getting like 24 or 28, and we just kind of keep accumulating more and more points. And then they had one relay that didn't even score, and we had all three of our relays get second. And so those are a lot of points there. When you're getting over 100 points on relays, you only have to get another 100 and some to win the title. So it just kept adding up for us. And we just had the depth. You know, we had Josh Waltman as our first state champion that year in 2016, and that was our only win. Iowa City West won 6 events. And we just accumulated more points. So that was when, you know, numbers started adding up of how the depth became a factor, how you had to have 2 or 3 guys make not only to the finals, you know, to get points, but just to get as high a placing as we possibly could. And we took 10 guys that year to state, and all 10 of them scored. So that was kind of a crazy thing, too, to do the math on, because not many teams can say they have that as their finals performance, if you will. So as we kind of built upon that, the next year we brought almost everybody back. We had, you know, 1 or 2 seniors leave. We had a couple incoming freshmen that took their spots really fast. And that year it was between us and Johnston, so it's kind of like the big brother, little brother, you know, rivalry there. And it was back and forth all year. I think we had a duel that was within 4 points. We had 2 invites where we beat them by 1.5 points and by 0.5 point total. So we knew the state.
How do you lose by 0.5 point?
We tie. So there's a race where you tied and you got the points split up down to the 100th. Yep, down to the 100th of a second tie. So you split the points, and ended up beating them by 0.5 point. So it's crazy. It was crazy. Yep, it was crazy. So just, you know, some of those fun rivalries that we get going on too. But no, it really revolves around so much of the team helping each other build up is what it is. Is yes, we're going to have one guy that's probably the fastest, but it's really fun when there's that healthy competition within that pushes those guys to be better and to get guys that perform at levels they never thought they'd ever be able to do. And sometimes they're doing it at practice. And so that's a really cool thing when guys really get involved that way and just help get each other to know we're 3 deep. Because if you're 3 deep and you can get 3 state qualifiers, that's a huge, I mean, there's only 32 that get to state and then the top 16 place. Yeah. And once you get to the top 16 after prelims, you're guaranteed to score. So that's kind of the goal, is to make it to that level, because then you're guaranteed points. And so those are some of the things that, you know, the bigger puzzle pieces, as you will, is try to figure out not only how can we get to be the fastest, but who can do what, and where do you feel confident that some guys that are working really hard are going to be able to drop time and hopefully perform in some of those areas that you really need. So last year was the closest we ever got. The girls have done a couple times where they had every single state qualifier in. We were one event of one person short last year, which that's incredible. I don't know that any boys team has ever gotten every single guy in that went to districts. And our sort of that didn't make it in one event did make it in another one. So we had everybody make it. So that was a crazy part too, is we had the biggest state team we've ever had last year. So that was kind of a huge boost for us as well, knowing that we just lost 6 All-Americans that graduated, and then last year we ended up with 6 new All-Americans out of the deal. So that was a huge boost for us to try to get some new guys up there, and many of those guys are back. 4 of those guys are back for both programs, Waukee High and Northwest this year. So that's a huge boost for a break-off, you know, year and things like that too, where the teams are divided a little bit more equally with state qualifiers and numbers there too.
Yeah. So going to like the golden age, where it was like championship on championship on championship. What was there something that you were doing differently then, or were you inspired by someone before that time happening? Like, what was kind of like everything leading up to that, like in your coaching career? Like, was there a change that you did? Was there something new, like a technique that you started? Was there certain things where you like had them watch film, or like I don't know, took an underwater camera and was like, this is your form or something. Like, I don't know. Like,
we had all that. So we had underwater cameras. We had GoPros going a lot. One of the things that I did is we separated out into their specialty areas. So pretty much for like the last probably 3 to 4 weeks of the season, every swimmer that was going to the district meet had their own personalized workout. So anybody who was in the 50 free was not doing what the 500 free guys were doing, or any breaststrokers were not doing what the backstrokers were doing. Butterfly, IM, they're all separate out. So some kids were the same, like they swam the same 2 events. So I'd put those guys together to train together. But otherwise, we'd have like a butterfly day, we'd have a backstroke day, and then we'd have other things where people all got together differently. So those are some of the things that probably make me different, is that we have different emphasis pieces where a lot of coaches do the same workout for all the guys and just have separate sets of maybe a distance or an IM, stroke, freestyle, whatever it happens to be. But for me, it was more or less like they got focused right away. And so we became specialized in certain areas, even though they still were well-versed in everything else. Yeah. But that was probably the biggest game changer that I had, was to specialize some of the workouts. We've come up with some new things. We video, and then we'll show it up on TV so kids can kind of see their form. We usually do rotations on Saturdays, so like we'll have a TV set up so they can see their dives and all that as we go. We've got an underwater speaker. We've had that in the past at the Y, that we can talk to people underwater, play music, so we can swim a little bit faster, things like that. We just got Luma lanes the last couple of years, which are a light pacing system underwater that definitely gets kids on pace, and it's really cool so they can see their time underwater. They just have to follow lights. So
kind of like the Olympic trials line.
Except we can see that. They can't see that. Now they can actually see the lines. So, and you can set it to whatever, so it's kind of cool. But that's been a huge game changer for training and all that too, of where, if they can see what time they've got to hit, they definitely will speed up to catch up with those lights on the bottom. So that's been fun too. But, I can't say there was anything that pinpoint on one thing, but it was just a group of people that worked so well together that they saw a bigger picture of what they were capable of doing. Like each one saw what they could do individually. And I think each person figured out, this is my role, this is what I need to do, and as long as I can do it, we'll find success. And that was the bigger thing too, is if one guy didn't hit his best times, there were other guys there to help pick him up. So it wasn't like we were reliant upon one guy and only one guy. We had a whole team of 15 to 20 guys that we relied on every single meet for the varsity, and the same number for the JV. And those are the things that made it interesting, is that we could shuffle some pieces around, and all of a sudden our lineup got stronger, and then it kept getting stronger, and then those things. It was kind of unique to see that, and everybody realized, like, hey, I see this area of weakness. Can I go do that? And then they just started training that, and we had people step up in ways that I'd never thought possible, and they hit goal times that would not have been possible if they were not with the other people training. So I think it was that people saw the potential in each other. They became great teammates. A lot of them became great friends. But it was just one of those things that we had the right pieces in the right places at the time. And that's just definitely what has helped us out throughout the last couple of years in the dynasty. You can call it the dynasty era, but it literally was. There was a time where we didn't, the golden age, where we didn't even have to, the talent was there. It was just massaging it in the right pieces, all I had to do. So, but I make it sound really easy. It's not, but it was just one of those things that it takes time. And I've already got a 40-hour job, teaching at Waukee High School. And then, with this year being new in physics and all that, but I was teaching AP chemistry, and then also chemistry in the past. And those are not easy classes either to stay on top of as a teacher. But I put equal time, if not more, into the coaching side of it. And that's really kind of probably what separates me from most people, is I look at almost all angles, and I try to fix things to make sure we don't develop bad habits, and try to get into the pieces that help us out. When you do things correctly, it's easy to maintain that. When you have bad habits, it takes a long time to get those fixed. And so we're going to try to get it to the starting point as we're on pace and on point where we're going to be a great season, a contender. And every year, honestly, with our kids that swim year-round and all those things too now, we just got so many more opportunities. The Waukee Waves have started now at the natatorium, and there's just a lot of things that, that in general are great for our sport. The brand new natatorium, you couldn't have asked for a better look and just the features that it brings, and it's awesome. It's been one of the things we've been waiting for and just hoping for, if you will. But now that it's a reality, it's just incredible to be able to have so many lanes to work with and just so many opportunities for kids in our community. It's just fantastic having second and third graders come swim, in the pool and all that, and that's part of their PE curriculum now. So it's a great step for Waukee schools for sure.
Yeah. Was there a sense of pressure when it was that quote unquote golden era, whatever, that like you knew, like let's say like you had the pieces to win championship? Obviously you've been coaching for a while before that, but there's this like either internal or outside pressure on yourself of you can win the championship, you have all the pieces, but like do you have what it takes to put it together? Like what goes through your head, especially with like a team where you're looking at just pure numbers and you're like, I think we have the pieces to win. Like what kind of, like how does that like rest on you, and like how do you help like work through that? Like do you have to go to Chipotle at 11 o'clock at night and work through the roster or something like that? Like how do you help internalize like?
Yeah, no, there's pressure when you're at the top. There's always pressure. That's the unfun part about it, but it's also the motivating part for me. I'm a very competitive person, so I like it when people tell me I can't do something or I'm not going to be able to do something, because I make it my life's ambition after that to be able to prove them wrong. So those are some things there that, I kind of learned way back when, and I wish I would have tapped into my mentors and all those things, but Dan Flannery was one of the ones from Ames that I now understand his position he was in of wanting B relays at the district meets and other things, just because you don't know who's going to swim fast on the big days if you have too many people to choose from. And it's a huge luxury to have, don't get me wrong. But when you've got 8 people that could be on a relay and almost swim the exact same time, you want to try to pick the fastest 4. And you want to try to have some things that give you that justification. And times are definitely easier part for our world. We don't have to feel like who's going to hit the last-minute three-pointer or who's going to throw the game-winning touchdown if the starting quarterback goes down, things like that. We can look at all of our backup times that we look at and just the consistency of those and have that as something that we go off of.
Would you say that makes it harder?
It can.
Whether
yeah.
You have the choice.
Yeah.
It's like 2 people who are like right next to each other.
Yeah.
Make the decision versus like we have one person who's the one person who's going to do it because we don't have anyone else.
Right. Yeah. So that's definitely it right there. And somebody might have a faster time, but they've done it one time. Somebody may have the more consistent time, but it's not as fast as what so and so is. So those are the things there. But no, I would say I've always had the luxury that, and I'm a very, very unique situation here. But the years that we were supposed to win, we won. And that was one of the things there. And I can look back at that now and take a little bit of a sigh of relief. But I know during those times, it was stressful. And it was one of those things that I didn't want to let them down and they didn't want to let me down. And I think there's that equal relationship there that we have of that rapport. And so for me, that was probably the hardest thing is I just didn't want to let them down. I'm a people pleaser. So when I let somebody down, like it affects me really hard. Yeah. And so those are the things I didn't want to have happen. And I think it made me more ambitious to try to make it happen. And then the fact that we won the first in the way that we did, that just wanted to make me do it again because I'm like, well, that was kind of fun. But, at the same time, like it wasn't really on our radar. Like it just, like I said, it just kind of happened. All these guys just happened to make finals, and score really high at the meet. And like, dang, like we're accumulating some points. And then really it was the butterfly that was kind of the dagger. They didn't have anybody in the butterfly. And we had all 3 guys in the top 6 of our team.
Butterfly's freaking hard.
And it's hard, yeah. So we scored, I think, like 50 points in that one event, which the most you can score in a relay is 40. And so we scored more points than a relay, and that's what really took us to that next level of where we could be potentially, in the title talk. And then it just kind of stayed there. That Iowa City West team kept winning events, but we kept getting, guys in the podium and things too, so where we could score some points to counteract that. So that was kind of crazy, but every year has been different. There's never been of the 5 titles, none of them are cookie cutter. Like I could say, oh, here's the plan. Like here's the book of how to win a state title. It's a hard read, and you have to go through, and sometimes it's in a different language, and sometimes the book's upside down and backwards, and pages are missing, and you have to put it all back together and then figure it out, translate what it means, because you're going through and literally working with a whole new team every year, and you're trying to figure out, I know that you're taking this person's spot, but you don't compete like them. So I've got to figure out how you compete, get you motivated like that, and then just try to figure out how we can get you as fast as we possibly can. What are the things with your body position and stroke rate that you do? How do we get you to perform at your peak? And is that going to be fast enough, or do I have to start working with somebody else to get in that spot? Or, somebody else now can't do this event, so I have to, the puzzle then all shifts completely, try to get those things in there too. So, but no, it's a, like we've talked about before, it's a chess match. It's a lot of things that goes into it. You have to try to figure out where your best times are possible, and then how does that stack up against the other teams in the state? And you're just trying to compete the best you can with what you've got. And at the end of the day, you just ultimately have to have the best belief. Like the parents are the biggest supporters of these kids, but as coaches, we're a close second. We're right behind them. And I think that's the biggest thing too, is just the relationships I've built with some of these guys over the years. It's been fun to know that they're competitive as well, but to take them to that next level and to actually think about how to get to that next level and the goal times they have of how to make that happen. It's not one of those things that just happens. You have to put in the work and energy and to know like how to start a race, what to do in the middle of it, and how to finish it to make sure that you can get to those goals. So there's a lot of things, a lot of pieces in play, but ultimately it comes down to, the belief in the kid and the kid knowing that you believe in them. And that's ultimately what I've been told. You can even go back to Mr. Dewey back in the day that he hired me. I'm grateful he gave me the opportunity to coach with Waukee, but, winning a state title was not in his radar. In the first 6 years, we were just hoping to build a program and be able to branch off from Johnston and be competitive. That's pretty much what we were, is we just wanted to be competitive. And, when we go through there, he'll tell you flat out, I'm probably one of the most optimistic coaches out there. Like, I have a belief in people that most people don't even think about, and those are things that I can believe in, and you have to. I mean, if you have got a bigger end goal, you have to get people there with you. You can't just do that all by yourself. And I joke with kids, I say, I've been to state every year so far, but I've scored 0 points. So in all those title runs, it's all on them. I've done my side, getting them to that point to where they can perform at the highest level, but, it's one of those things that they had to do it. And a lot of times, none of them were ever perfect. It was never how we laid it out on paper. But in the end, we still achieved our goal. And that was kind of a bigger thing, too, for these kids to figure out is even though you have a perfect plan laid out, it's supposed to go just like this. It doesn't always go that way. And you still can be a winner, in a lot of things. You can still find success in life. And that's kind of the cool, bigger picture that we get from a lot of those titles is that, yeah, it didn't go as planned, but it still ended the goal that we wanted. So, yeah.
I was talking with Talmadge earlier about something like a phenomenon that I feel like it's only very specific to swim, where he was like, you don't swim your best times until like around state.
Yep.
You don't really know how fast you are until like you taper down because you're doing 2-a-day practices.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So like how much I feel like I'd be pretty anxious about it, but like anxiety or like pressure is on that moment because as you're talking about, you put the trust in the kids, you score 0 points personally, but at the same time, they're not performing at the level that eventually they're going to get to when they taper down and like they're doing less. I don't know if we can consider it mileage.
Yep, yardage. Yeah.
Yardage or whatever.
Yep.
Like are you after all of your years of experience, are you able to tell like who will come out on top and who will like make the biggest changes? Because I mean, obviously you can probably still see time differences, but like they're always tired.
Yeah.
I swear all the time I talk to Talmadge and he's just like, dude, I'm so tired. I'm like, dude, let's go do something. He's like, I'm so tired. Like,
yeah, that's the hard part. The life balance is tough on that part. And then yes, jokingly but not, some swimmers train all season just to drop hundredths of seconds is where we're at by the end of the season. So they're trying to get better than they were the year before, but they have to work harder than they've ever worked to be able to do that. And that's the thing, too, and we try to work smarter with that process as well. But, yeah, I have only missed a couple times in the past of guys that I should have probably kept on the district team that I didn't. And, those are the things that you can kind of see throughout the year, too, a little bit. You know who's kind of the gamers, the guys that step up for meets. We've unfortunately battled over the last several years here just sickness. We have one guy that has a cough, and all of a sudden we have a lane that has a cough, and then the whole team has a cough, and then we think we're through it, and then somebody else gets a cough in December, and then it goes through the whole team again, and then somebody gets the flu, and that's the only bad part is that it's the gift that keeps on giving around that time. So we try to stay as healthy as we can, but at the same time realize that we are in the cold and flu season. There's a lot of things out there that we can't control, but we always try to highlight to the guys, I'd rather lose you for a day or two of practice than to take out the entire team for a week. That's ultimately what it comes down to. We need guys to be able to perform, but at the same time, like if you're coughing and hacking up a lung, we can't have you perform. I mean, that's just not a viable thing for you to be doing at that point. So, and then we've got, issues with some guys that, if you didn't lift in the off season or if you're just getting sore and you're kind of working back in too quickly, you can get injured. So some of those things kind of sideline us too. But ultimately it just kind of comes down to, the whole season I can kind of see some things, but I've also taken into account some of their club times or just some other sidebar things that I know they've been lifting year-round as opposed to just during season. 3 months is great to be lifting, but 12 months is where you're going to get your benefit. So if you can lift year-round, those are the things there that'll definitely get us to that next level. But just a lot of factors go into that. But, yeah, times throughout the year, I mean, a lot of guys are not going to have probably their fastest times in the middle of the season. That's when we have the most yards piled on us and mileage, as you said, too. But it is a lot. I mean, we're doing thousands and thousands of yards. I mean, most of the guys will hit probably 10 to 12,000 yards a day with their double days of practice, which you're looking at 8 to 9 miles of swimming when you do that. And if you were to run, that's equivalent of doing 4 times more. So you start taking those numbers times 4. That's how far you'd have to run to equal the amount of calorie intake and all that we'd be utilizing. So I mean, it's a marathon almost in a day. So and sometimes more. So yeah, it's a lot of training, but at the same time, when it's focused and channeled and for a purpose, it definitely has the huge benefits. It's not just junkyards that we swim. It's actually for a purpose, and they're working on their technique, they're working their turns, they're working their underwaters, and the specific parts of the sport. Those are things that get us to that next level for sure.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to a coaching role with choosing like who goes where and everything like that, and like how you approach a season, how much of the time do you have to take to like, in a sense, drop your ego and be like, obviously you've been super successful. And I was talking to Coach Twig about this too. Is like when you won 3, or when she won 3, and like you won 3 straight, right?
Yep.
Like what, at the end of the day, are you able to come back to, or just in general, like how hard is it? Because I can't imagine how hard it would be to like still look at yourself in the mirror and look at yourself and be like, you got to drop the ego and you got to look at it and say, like, hey, it's a new season, it's a new start.
Yeah.
Like, how hard is that to do, and like just to like know it won't be from the beginning.
So I was in the luxury of starting the program when we only had 26 kids total, so that's not even enough for a full JV lineup. You need 15 for a varsity lineup, so we were struggling to make our varsity lineup full. But I accept every year as a new challenge. It's like challenge accepted here. And some challenges, it's almost like playing cards. You get, a much better hand sometimes than what you're dealt, and other times you just want to fold it up and be like, reshuffle here a little bit. But no, I think, and I go back to the first thing I said too, is if you surround yourself with great people, great things will happen. And so the fact that some of these kids are really great swimmers, that's just the icing on the cake for me. It's one of those things where when people start our program, they're moldable yet, and when they leave the program, still that way, but we hope they have some better life skills and the social part of it, to be grateful for more things than what they kind of started with, and just, in general, growth that has to happen. And I think that's the biggest thing, is sometimes we have to accelerate that process if we're really going to get up there. But the guys have to come up with the belief first. They have to know that they have the capabilities of doing what they can do. And then when you get them to that level, you build that trust. And that's the part where it just takes off, is once you've established that they trust you, then all of a sudden they're willing to do anything that you ask them to do at that point. And that's, for a coach's standpoint and to a swimmer, that's exactly what we want to have happen, because then it's not questioned, it's not debated, it's not one of those things that we have to waste time. Like, we know this is going to help you, just go do it. Like, let's not talk about how you're going to do it, just actually do it. And so those are the pieces that definitely build that bigger picture of the puzzle for the end of the season. But rings and trophies are fun, I'm not going to lie. Those are fun things to have. They get dust on them, though. After a while, they're just things that get replaced in a trophy case when newer and better trophies come out and all those things too. But the memories that go with that will last forever. And that's one of the things that trophy reminds me of. It's not that we were the champions. It's the fact that a collective group scored more points than any other team at that particular competition. And they did it with grit, they did it with integrity, they did it with sportsmanship, and they did it in all the right ways. That's what really means more to me than anything else, is that we are a team of growth, and we are a team of potential. And when you take all of that and get it to like the maximum possible end result, that's the win for me. Whether that means a first place trophy or we just have a small team go to state, that's a win for me, is whenever we get kids that have that belief in themselves to get to that level, that's where it's at. So for me, like I said, it's a whole new start every year. And one of the things with that is that, with Northwest this year, we have a brand new start, clean slate start, because we'll have, nobody's been a standalone swimmer from Northwest yet. We've always been combined. So this will be a year of firsts, a lot of things as we go through that. But it'll also be a year where the expectations are high, because, well, you're Waukee and you've had all these state titles. Are you going to be able to perform the way that they have in the past? Sometimes it's unfair expectations, but at the same time, nobody goes back to Cedar Rapids, Washington, that won 26 titles in like 27 years and says, well, why aren't you guys winning state titles, and things of that nature. So it's the process of evolution there too, of teams, and just some of the off-season things that they do, and just, a lot of the things in general of the sport. But it's every year it's humbling, but at the same time, every year once you've tasted it, you want to go back for more state titles. That's the thing, is you kind of look at that, and pretty much right away if you've got a shot at it or not, and just what the other teams have. And this year, it's a wide open ball game. There's not a team that's just going to be dominant, I don't think, this year. There's going to be some teams that are at the top tier, but I definitely think Northwest is in that conversation if we get our potential to turn. So, for sure.
So kind of looking towards the season.
Yeah.
What can everyone listening kind of expect from either the team, or just like things you want to manifest, I guess?
For sure. No, I've started off all 15 years here after the first day with the same emphasis on the first day. First day of practice, like, how did it go? And I said there were no drownings. Okay, so we're successful in that. So we want to survive. That's the first thing. Yeah. But, I'm leaving that kind of in the boys' hands this year. So we've got a very good team dynamic right now. We've got some of our top-tier guys. We have Dylan Alt, that's a junior national qualifier, so he'll be down in Austin, Texas here in December. And it's a very elite group of swimmers that get down to that level. And it's something that's very, very, very challenging to even qualify for. And we've got several others that are making comebacks for us from the state meet and from a couple years past. And we have a good group of freshmen that came in this year. So we've got about 4 or 5 guys from the varsity training group as freshmen this year to fill some of the voids we lost as seniors. So there's good, right now, and there's also good for the future as well coming through. And I think that there's some definite potential, but at the same time, it's still very moldable pieces yet. I mean, we're going to have our first meet here coming up, and so I get to see one thing, and then we'll do more meets and switch the guys around to different events and kind of see what that looks like. But ultimately, by the end, many of them are going to have that mentality of wherever you need me, coach, put me in, because I can definitely do whatever you need me to do, and we'll be successful that way. So, and that's what it really takes, is that team mentality. If you're a specialist or if you're a varied guy, just knowing that when you are put into a spot to do your job, that you get it done. And those are the things that we can, kind of evaluate as the year goes on, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and everything. So, I don't know when this episode will come out, but as of right now, we're filming this November 25th. That's like a Monday.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you would want to say, or anywhere where you can find information about the boys swim team?
Yeah, no, that's great. We have some social media accounts out there, so you're welcome to follow us there. And then we also, it's a great opportunity for us to be our standalone team, and it's an exciting time to see swimming. And after an Olympic year especially, those are some of the things that definitely get our numbers boosted up there. And if you've ever thought about just, getting a different friend group or just trying some things out that you haven't really done. I know you were an 8th grade swimmer yourself and survived. We'll say that for a
definitely survived.
Short season there, but no, it's just a fun group of boys. It's a fun opportunity. You get really strong, physically, but we want to help you out mentally, emotionally, physically, all the things that would definitely make you a better, well-rounded person and things of that nature too with the sport. But no, it's a part of my life. It's a crazy thing that I wake up at 4:30 and I rarely ever make it to my alarm. I'm usually up before then, but it's something that gets me excited every morning to know that I can affect these kids in a positive way and to push them to levels that they've never been able to even fathom before. That's kind of my goal for them. And then to hit that, those are things that, just become great life lessons and to build a better future is what we're trying to do. So for sure.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you having me be here.